tell me loud enough. It's still your fault. So again, last day to withdraw is this Friday. So you have to make that decision based on one test and on where you are in labs and homework, though they're still all worth at least 90 or more, but you have to do them. Okay, so, and then test one, we're thinking maybe the 6th, and then the following part of test one, either the 11th or the 13th. Okay, so we still have at least one more React lab to do. And then I'll try to put the earlier parts of the test first, the SVG and neighbor stuff on the 6th, to give you a little bit more time to do the React, since we're not quite done the React yet. And then we'll move into, I think, timers and view, and that will be material for test 3. All right. So I told you where things stand in normal for all classes. Time to withdraw. I told you where things stand in this class, where we have a test coming up. The new material is React radio buttons, and I'm going to revisit React checkboxes at work, but I was getting behind the scenes warnings that I managed to get rid of. So I'm presuming it's a somewhat better solution. Any questions? I also posted, I forgot to say that, the criteria for the project. So here's the new stuff starting today. The project, there's a project, and it's just a sort of a laundry list of things from the course. A few of them we haven't even had yet, but you can get started. You're supposed to have some theme or subject. You should have some SVG, some visual thing. There are things out there that generate SVG, and you can get very sophisticated SVG, and I will tend to weight that low. I want your own SVG, even if it looks like crap. If it's yours and I could tell it's yours, then I'm happier than something that looks fantastic, but you just sort of auto-generated. You should get some information from either some external file. It could be JSON, it could be an API. I'll take XML, I'll take CSV, but some external source of data. You have to have at least 2 pages. You should have 10 elements on the page. This includes headers and paragraphs, and anything that's on the page as an HTML tag counts as an element. So 10 things on a page is not very much at all. I mean, the header is one of them. Okay. You should have some different types of things for the user to interact with. So selects, inputs, checkboxes, radio buttons. So it can't be all, I'm not counting a button, but I am counting radio buttons and checkboxes and inputs and selects. And you should have at least 2 types of interaction for the user to work with. You're going to have, this is the part that we haven't seen yet. There's going to be some view. You need to have some React. If you want them to sort of make sure they don't interfere with each other, you can put them on different pages. But each of them applies to a region on your page. So you can put them on the same page and just in different regions, and they won't interfere with one another. But it might be safer if you put them on different pages. And the 2-page was a minimum. So if you're holding off on the view and you're doing everything else, and you already have 2 pages, and then all of a sudden you bring in view, you need a 3rd page, that's perfectly fine. You should have some style. When we have CSS, each line in CSS is an attribute value pair. The background color is pink. That's an attribute, background color, and a value, pink. So you should have at least, your style should have at least 20 of these. And once you get into it and you're, saying if I hover over the button, it's this color, it's 20 is easy to come up with. You should have something, a newer thing, a filter or a grid or a transition or an animation, one of the newer CSS type things. You should have these meta tags. Just look them up and give me meta tags. Should give me something. The recent homeworks have had some things from the W3 schools, tabs, accordion, slideshows, modal images. I should have 2 of those things. Something with a font. You can download a TTF font and use it, or you can link up to Font Awesome or something. If you pick a font, if you don't download the TTF font and you do a very sort of subtle font that's just slightly different than a normal font, I might miss it. So there are 2 ways around this. You can put a comment and says, here's my font, and then I'll see it. Or you can choose a font that's so weird, I'll know that you brought down, then you used an unusual font. So, but do some font thing. There has to be, each page has to have some interaction. So if you have just a simple about page, then you're going to need 3 pages. You have to have at least 2 pages with interaction. There should be in there just some basic programming, and if, a loop, an array, an object, and then yes, they can be combined. So you can loop over an array of objects and get it all in one. I shouldn't be able to make your page crash by putting in bad data or clicking out of the wrong order or what have you. There should be some kind of calculation or manipulation. There should be some logic going on that you respond to a user and display, to have to do some concatenating, have to do some calculating, have to do something that requires a bit of logic, addition, multiplication, string manipulation, something. If you're not sure you have it, then you can ask and I'll say yeah or nay. You should have comments, what the code does, or a good set of comments for you to have to make sure I grade it properly, is to say, here's my this and here's my that. This is like a minimal thing. Like you can say, I have everything on this list and I have everything on this list and everything's right. And you might get like a 90 and you might be happy with a 90 and that's fine. But if you're the type that wants, a 99, then you better give me like a little bit extra. Not just a minimal amount of data, not just a minimal amount of interaction, not a minimal amount of logic, but maybe a little bit more. Okay. Maybe some originality in idea. So that is the project that will be due near the end, maybe like the last week of class or something. All right, so that's the project that's coming up. I posted a new homework, just watched some videos. I posted 2 parts of a practice test. It's practice, you don't have to do anything. I need a React part to add down here, which I will add. So that is, the React part is coming, but the crime map is a neighbor child parent thing, and the moon is a SVG thing, as it says. Okay. All right, new stuff in React. I'm going to do radio buttons, which are rather like, yes, the test. Oh, I didn't press the publish button. It's up. What's wrong with it? Of course it's up. All right. Thank you. All right. So room reservation is just one of my examples yet again, but this time in React. And again, our usual logic in React is that we're going to generate the page dynamically. All right, so I'm going to work in code. I open up code. The React part of the test will almost certainly have JSON because I haven't put JSON on a test, and I love JSON. So JSON's coming and probably on the React. And then you're going to need the live server or some other way, but I do it by live server. And when I'm working with a live server in code, I open a folder. Okay, so I have an HTML, and as we said in React, we are trying to generate most of the HTML, so there's not much HTML here. Here's the body. I have a header. I have a div, which is where I'm going to add my React. We have add my elements by React. It is of the wrapper class, which I use. Usually that's my class when I'm working with grids. And then there's a script. And I have two versions of this script. And room is more like what I did with checkboxes previously. And room 2 gets rid of some of those warnings. So I'll run it both ways and show you what the errors were, what the warnings were. They weren't really errors, it was working, but they were warnings. And I got rid of the warning, so it made me happier. Okay. You need the CDN. I'm working in Babel, not in pure React, and I have a style. So I'm trying to keep to this more sophisticated style where I separate everything. I usually don't insist on that in a test. So if you want to put them all in one big file, that's probably fine. The style has a body. It has a wrapper. And trying to get us out of the way. Okay. And so I just have a simple box, wrapper, and body. That's all the style I have. I have radio buttons, and I didn't do any styling of the checked radio button, though I have done that for the checked checkboxes. All right, so that's the style. Let's look right now at room.js. Well, let me go back and run it. Right click, open live server. So we've seen this problem before. Choose a room in a drop-down select, 120, Mondays at 6 o'clock in the morning. Ugh. And reserve the room. If I try to reserve the room again, it will tell me there's a conflict. So I'll move to a different room, 153, and then it's okay. If I move to a different time, Tuesday, it's okay. A different day, Tuesday, a different time, 7 o'clock. If I go back, it tells me there's a conflict. Okay, so we played this game before. We're just doing it in React this time. Okay, so and all we have here is a div to hold everything. So here's room 2. This will have the React. Here is the class. Here is the putting an object of the class on the page. And then I have, in this case, I have two things that are outside. So we'll have to talk about them. Okay, so the class, remember to capitalize the name of the class. I'm extending the React component. I have the constructor. I need the super. I'm going to have here, I'm not reading a file. There's no, I could have a JSON for this, but I don't. So I just said, here's an array of possible rooms, 120, 153, 155. Here's an array of possible days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Here's an array of times. Here's the chosen room, so I'll say the 0th room. Here's the index, choose the day to be Monday, choose the time to be 6. Okay, so that is my state, a set of possible room, day, and time, and the chosen room, day, and time. And then the schedule is an array of times that the person has scheduled during a given running of the page. And it starts off as an empty array. Okay, we have the handle, the room change, the day change, and the time change. And we've seen this before, that handle, the room change is going to be called when you change the drop-down select, and the value is going to become the room index. Handle day is radio buttons. When you change the radio button, the value is going to become the day index. So if I do play with the drop down, I change the room index. If I change the first set of radio buttons, I change the day index. If I change the second set of radio buttons, I change the time index. And we have this, so we do this set state thing. All right, and then here's the method called by clicking on the button. I make a copy of the schedule. Remember, I don't interact directly with the state. I don't interact directly with the state. I make a copy of the state. I change the copy of the state, and then I make the copy the new state. That is my what I do React-wise. So I have this.state.room index and this.state.rooms, and that combination gives me the room H120. I'm creating an item to add to my schedule, and so I am concatenating to it the days array with the day index, and the same thing with the times array and the times index. And then I just console that out so we can see it. And then I'm looking at the schedule, which I made a copy of, and I'm asking, here's my little question about duplicates. So I have this array, I'm using the index of an array, and I'm looking for this new thing. And if I find it, if I don't find it, the index is -1, and then I add it to my copy. Otherwise, if I did find it, I just say there was a conflict and I don't do anything. And then I set the copy, then I just edited to be the new schedule in my state. And then here is the render. So I'm making a div of type box. Again, I'm working with the grid. Remember, I don't say class, but class name, because I'm in this weird half JavaScript, half HTML world of Babel. So I made a div. I say, here's a header with the room. I start to make a select. The value of the select is the room index. The on change of the select, it goes to handle room change. And I'm going to loop over this state rooms. Map is just a kind of a loop. I'm looping over the rooms. Room is a dummy name of the thing I am looping over. So it is a room, and I is the index. I was console crazy. There I'm consoling it. And I am creating options. Here's my open option. There's my close option. Anything that's repeated, it wants me to give it a key. That's behind the scenes React stuff. It won't affect, it will be a sort of a behind the scenes warning you'll get if you don't have the proper keys, but it won't prevent it from working. But it wants it. If you didn't have it, I might take, you know, might be worth all of a point or something like that. So don't go crazy over the key, but if you're going for all the points, then have it. So the option has a value, and I always like when I'm working with arrays for my values to be the indices of the array. So the value is just this counter I. What they see between open option and close option is the room. And that's populated my drop-down list. There's the end of that div. Here's a new div, which is of the type box for the days. This time I'm looping over the day array. This.state.days map is basically a loop. I am creating a div. I'm creating a number of divs because I'm in a loop, so I gave it a key. In that div, I'm making a radio button. So it's an input of type radio. I give it a key because React wants it. I give it an ID because I want it to work in conjunction with the label. I give all the radio buttons the same name, so they work as a group. Whenever I'm working with an array, I like the value behind the scenes thing to be the index of the array. And I set the event, the onChange event, to be handle day change, which we defined above. That's the end of the checkbox, or sorry, the radio button. Here's the label. The labels are also repeated, so I also gave them a key. And then I gave them an HTML4. That should match the ID, so these two guys will work as a team. And that means I can connect, the user can click on the label or on the radio button. In the test, when I say, you know, that there should be labels and that the user should be able to click on the label or the radio button, that's what I mean. Okay, so that made this set of days. Then I'm making another box, which was for times. I'm looping over the time. And basically the same thing. I made a div, I gave it a key. I made an input, I gave it a key, I gave it an ID, I gave it a type, I gave it a name, I gave it a value, I gave it an onChange. Key behind the scenes React thing, so React can pick out different components. ID, so it can work with a label. Type, to say that it's a radio button. Name, to group the radio buttons together so you can choose one and only one item from it. Value, the behind the scenes thing that gets passed. I always work with the indices when I have an array. onChange, so that there is an associated event updating the index when they choose a new radio button. I have a label. It has a key because React wants these keys. It has an HTML4, so then it works in conjunction with the radio button. I'm displaying the time, close off the label, close off the div. That gave me this. Then I have another div. Here's my div that just has the button in it. That was here. And then I had a div of the type box. I added a style that made it span 2 columns, start in the second column and span 2 columns. That's what this reservations did. And then I had the header reservations, and then I'm looping over the schedule. And again, I'm making a div. I give it a different key than the key above for divs. Otherwise, I'd have things with the same ID, which would be bad. So I'm looping over the divs. And also I'm giving them putting a span in there as well. That's kind of weirdly overkill. And putting the item, which is that the schedule was those things like whole H120, M for Monday, 7 for 7 o'clock. So that's the end of the div for that. And then the overall big fragment and the end of the return, the end of render, the end of the class. Here's me putting that an object of that class onto the page in div room reserve. And then if you remember when we did checkboxes, I had all this, if it was checked or not checked, so I didn't have a simple loop here. I had a loop with an if that was saying, if it was one of the selected checkboxes, then make it checked, and otherwise make it unchecked. And that worked, but behind the scenes it was yelling at me. So I found this other method where just at the end, I am checking the first day checkbox and checking the first time checkbox. Behind this, it was acting like they were checked without checking them. This is me sort of physically going in and checking them so that the user can see that that choice is made for them. It was effectively made for them here, but it wasn't showing up on the page until I did this. Room 2, that's room 2, sorry. Room was more like what I did before with the if. If the counter is the index, then include the checked, and otherwise don't include the checked. So they both do the same thing, but if I show you the console, so here's the newer one with room 2. This is me printing in the console, but there are no warnings or errors. And I'm just doing a lot of printing, but it's not, that's just me console logging, not it giving me warnings. But if I switch over to room 2, save. And if I do that, it was giving me it has one of these key issues where I'm looping through something without giving it each one a different key. So it was yelling at me for that. But it was also giving me this uncontrolled issue because of what I was doing. I was specifying the checked or unchecked properties in my React, and it sort of didn't like that. So that's what that complaint is about. And version 2 got rid of that issue. But the price that I paid was this little awkward highlight, make them checked equals true on the page, sort of at the end. Okay, without that, if that's not there, that's, ooh, I didn't want to do that. I just want to comment down. If that's not there, and then let me, I want to go to the HTML and run the HTML. If I say make a reservation, it's going to say that it's Monday at 6 o'clock, but they're not, you can see they're not visually chosen. They're logically chosen, but they're not visually chosen. that's what that's doing for me. So now if I go back there, now they're visually chosen. All right, so that is that. I went back and redid the checkboxes, but there's one more change in the checkboxes because the checkboxes came from a file. So let me show you checkboxes, the new checkboxes. I've shown you the old checkboxes. Let me show you the new checkboxes. Go back. So here's my art book checkbox redo. Close that, close that. Come here. Here's my art. Here is my, now I'm going to room 2 and room, that's not, I don't want room reservations. I want React art book. Okay, so now I'm going to art 2, and art 2 is rather like room 2. Open with the live server. Here is with some pre-selecting. Here is, let's do the inspect. And I'm choosing new checkboxes, deselecting old checkboxes, and I'm not getting any error. I'm not getting any warnings over here. And okay. So in, I don't want room, I want, don't want room, I want art 2. So I still have pre-selected 3 and 7. And I have handled a change when you change the checkbox. Here's me trying to select book 3 and 7 to be checked. And this does not work here because we're reading a file, and reading a file is asynchronous. So it's not going to wait till I read the file. It's going to jump ahead and try to perform this. And it's going to say, I don't know what you mean by get element by ID book _3. There's no such thing. So there's an asynchronous problem here. And then the synchronicity problems were settled by this component did mount. That's where we read the file. So if I come up here to component did mount, I'm fetching art anatomy JSON. I'm responding with the JSON. Then I am setting the state based on the JSON. And when I set the state based on the JSON, it re-renders because the state has changed. And then when the state has changed, now there's a radio button, or no, sorry, a checkbox with the ID book _3 and another one with book _7, and I can check them. So again, without this, it will act like 3 and 7 are chosen, but it won't display it visually. So if, let me save that, and then where's the HTML? Oh, I should have just updated it. Let me see. So now it's down here, heads, features, and faces, and anatomy for artists are selected, but they're not checked. So that's what this did here, is the visual checking of the checkbox. So if I do that now, or if I save it and I go back, they're checked. Okay. So it didn't like me. It has this notion of controlled and uncontrolled, and it didn't like me saying what should be checked and what shouldn't be checked when I'm rendering the HTML elements. It worked, but it didn't like it. It was giving me warnings. It's saying don't do that. But when I didn't do that, it wasn't visually showing up on the page as indicating what was actually chosen. And so then I had to go. Now, if I didn't choose any books, I made my life hard. I know I made my life hard by pre-choosing books 3 and 7. But that was on purpose. I wanted to challenge myself. And so it would have been, life would have been easier if I hadn't pre-selected 2 books. And in the radio buttons, it's like a 50-50. Like if you don't pre-select the first room in the first time, then it makes your life easier in one way in that you don't have to go do the work of pre-selecting them, but it makes your life hard in a different way. What if the user doesn't, if you don't choose one and the user doesn't choose one, then you've got to test for that. So with checkboxes, it's reasonable with checkboxes not to have anything checked. With radio buttons, it's possible not to have anything checked, but then you need to have a response for that. You have to say, if nothing's checked, then let me yell at the user and make them check something. All right. So now we know checkboxes and radio buttons and drop-down lists and buttons and inputs. So now we have all of our normal ways to interact within React. Any questions? I posted what else? I told you about the last data withdrawal. I told you about the project. I told you about the practice test. And I gave an idea of when I think the test is going to be, and I don't think anybody's told me about any competing tests. I am thinking for part 1 will probably be the non-React part of the test on the 6th. And then the React part probably 11 or 13. So you still have time to tell me if you have tests, major exams on those days, then I can try to avoid. Any questions for the recording? All right, stop recording.